morning and welcome on this sunrise safari. My first one back after a few days off, and how exciting to start with the Nkuhumas. We've got Junior over my left shoulder. My name is Brent Smith and I'm going to be your guide for the next few hours. We have Jeandré on camera with me. We have Jamie and Wium in the other vehicle, and we have Tara and Nikki in final control, and Scott and James out on tracking team. So what a great way for me to come back to lovely lions, and thank you very much all of those who let us know about the lions here on the Waterhole. Scott and James were actually tracking them around our camp when we first found those tracks, and also thanks very much for all the updates on Arethusa. Unfortunately, there's a gremlin in the Arethusa aerial at the moment, so we are unable to broadcast from there. Hopefully it will be fixed at some point during the drive, and we can make our way over across there to see what's out there. So, for those of you who might be new, we're on a live safari sitting next to lions. Hopefully they're going to move. Very cool weather this morning. It's 14 degrees Celsius, and that's 57 Fahrenheit. So quite nippy, which is good to spend time with cats. They're going to hopefully be on the move and be quite active. And I know you were with them with Scott yesterday when they killed that zebra foal, and that's not a very big meal, so there is a strong possibility they might hunt again. We're just going to move around so we can have a look at the rest of the pride that are lying up just in front of where young Junior is at the moment. Oh, and they're on the move. Lionesses, so it seems that one is still missing. I heard she disappeared while I've been away. Thanks everyone for the welcome backs. It's great to be back, and quite fitting that the picture I posted before the safari this morning is of one of the Nkorho lionesses, that without even having to work too hard this morning, we've got a pride of lions. So quite nice little low-level shot towards the remaining lioness. The others are moving off across to my right. Quite sure she's going to join them shortly. There we go. Okay, we're going to join them. Junior, I'm sure, will follow suit when he feels the need. There's been so much upheaval in the lion populations at the moment around here, and it seems even while I was away there was a whole bunch of upheaval and still quite a bit of confusion about exactly what's exactly going on. We had a long chat around the fire last night, and hopefully we're going to be able to figure it out in the next couple of days. speaking of lions and whereabouts they are, thanks very much to Dan on Twitter, who said the Birmingham boys were to the east of us on the Nkorho cam, and they left at 5:30 a.m. this morning. So as the crow flies, that's probably around 11 kilometers or so from where we are now, and hopefully the Nkuhumas don't walk back into them again. Okay, we're just going to try move on up ahead. They seem to be heading straight north, and this is a particularly troublesome block they're heading into. Even in the dry season, where we can see quite nicely, it is quite thick. So this is almost, from following lions during the daytime, idyllic weather for us to follow them hunting. Even though they did eat last night, amongst this many lions, the zebra foal isn't really going to go too far. And as you can see, they were probably really bloody when you saw them last, and they now look very clean. So a good grooming session, allo grooming each other as well as grooming themselves to remove that blood. So while we stay with the Nkuhumas on the move, we're going to cross across to Jamie, who's with our other apex predator here at Djuma and Arathusa Private Game Reserves, and we'll be back with the lions a little later.
Good morning everyone, and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie and I am back from a wonderful and very relaxing leave that I spent with my family, and I have Wium, the wildebeest, on camera with me this morning. Very chilly and cold Sabi Sands. It is definitely nippier than when I left. I was sort of really hoping to come back to summer, but apparently there's a cold front over us at the moment that looks as though it might even rain on our heads. And we're just at the hyena den, which I'm thrilled that Steph managed to relocate. It's been a long time since I've spent any times with my favorite spotted carnivores. The den is active. It's a much trickier den site than their old one up on Philemon's Cutline. It's very, very thick in this block. May have to do some repositioning. See if we can see the others. There was a cub sticking its head out of that hole a little bit earlier, but it appears to have gone back inside. It looked like the youngest one. And I can't believe how much it's grown in the 2 weeks that I've been gone. But I think it's feeling a little bit shy because Mommy is not here as far as I can tell. The others, it was a very active den site when I first arrived. The one female has a very large leg, so I'm going to try and reposition so that we can get you a view of that. The female had a big leg, it looked like probably from a buffalo, and she was calling for the 2 middle-aged cubs. Let's see if we can get them. They just went over the top of the den as we linked back across from Brent. Definitely chosen a much more secluded den site now. Very tucked away in here. They went up over the top of this den and around to the back. I'm just going to see if we can get another view of them. There we go. You can see them on my right. And what are you eating today? Okay, now seeing it a little bit closer, it definitely doesn't look like a buffalo leg. Maybe something like a kudu. And it's not the freshest of legs. You can see now these cubs are going to start shifting to supplementing their milk diet with solid foods, and they'll still continue to suckle for the next 6 or so months. Hyena cubs will continue to suckle right up to a year old. And these two they were born in February. So they're probably just over 6 months. And she looked up there, or they looked up in alert, because something, and it sounded like elephants, was breaking branches, but quite far away from where we are now. Absolutely phenomenal to see, even in the space of not just the 2 weeks I was gone, because it took us a while to locate the hyena den, so it's probably been about 3.5 weeks since I last saw these cubs, and they really have grown incredibly in that time. Even with such a small piece of leg, It's still fairly pungent. We're sitting directly downwind of it. So we've got the usual combination of hyena den smell, so sort of a wet dog smell, and putrefying meat. It's quite a nice combination first thing in the morning. And I always find whenever I go on a 2-week leave cycle, as wonderful as it is to see my family and spend some time with them, it always gets to the point right at the end where I'm very keen to get back into the bush. And this is the female with the mother of these two. She's got almost like a piercing on her right ear. Just a tiny little cut flap there you can see just as whenever she turns her ear towards us. Come on, girl. There you go. There you can see that little nick just in the top corner of that ear. Which tells us which hyena this is. And generally it's easiest to use their spot patterns for IDing them, but when you see them quickly, you don't have time to compare them to pictures or anything else you might have, then it's useful to just have a look at their other markings, especially when you've got spot... Whoop. Not too sure what that was about, because it's not as though she's reluctant to share that food with them. She actually came, and when we first arrived she was chewing on it, and then she walked over the top to where the entrance of the den is, the main entrance, and she gave a very low soft contact call, and these two came popping their heads out and running after her over the top of the den wall. The one that was chased off is one of the twins. So the middle age of the 3 sets of ages that we have at the den site. Now I haven't been here since the den was found, so I'm not too sure what's been happening with the dynamics. The cub who's feeding with the mother does look to me to be one of the other twins, but slightly bigger. I can't see the nick mark on the back end that was very characteristic of the oldest cub of this group, so I think this is the twins. And it could be that this one, because it is bigger than the other, could well be a female, so it could be a female-male set of twins. I'm just going back through my memories of watching the dynamics at the hyena den, and I think actually I was wrong about this being one of the twins. I think it is the oldest cub, which is why it's so much bigger, and then this is its mother. But then where the other twin is, I'm not too sure. Might still be in the den, but that would explain then why the other one was chased off. I'm just trying to think. This is quite a young female, and I seem to remember the mother of the oldest cub did look a little bit younger than the others. they're munching away at that joint of meat, whatever it might have been. It's a little bit too rotten to really distinguish. Paul was wondering if this was the knee bone connected to the shin bone, and absolutely, there's definitely some singing detective references there. We don't seem to have the hip bone, definitely been pulled out of the socket. Just grabbing the little bits of bone, and those legs will have lots and lots of little pieces of bone. Obviously you get the big long bones, the tibia, the fibia, and then the femur that they're gnawing on, but there's also lots and lots of little bones like the one that the cub's got now, and those will be the metatarsals, the metacarpals, tiny little bones that have been reduced to create that ankle joint that is so high up on antelope. It makes a very good chew toy for a young hyena, nice and small. You can start practicing that crushing technique that they have. Now she's looking very full. So it could well be that the hyena clan killed whatever animal this is, and she's already snacked on it. Although, as I said, that leg is looking fairly old. And it would be a guess, but I'd even hazard that the colour that it is at the moment makes me wonder if it wasn't stashed in a dam somewhere, which hyena are famous for doing. They'll actually drag their kills into a dam and lie on top of them for a while and let them rot a little bit nice and soft, and then munch on them. That's a guess, but that leg is a very, very funny colour. When we first drove in, I actually thought it was a stick. And that's not just the normal rotting colour. Now we've been watching the dynamics of this hyena clan for a while, and we can see her munching away on that joint there. You can see what I was talking about earlier about what colour that bone has taken on. It's a sort of a horrible grey colour, and we can only imagine that if we were to eat something like that, how incredibly sick we would be with food poisoning. And Gary was wondering how it is that hyenas don't get sick from that kind of meat that they eat, and they are very specially adapted to be able to consume whatever they have to in terms of rotting meat. But that is a very good question. One of their biggest advantages is their stomach acid is probably about 3 or 4 times stronger than ours, and it can dissolve away almost anything. So any bacteria that makes its way in there is going to be dissolved and won't make it any further past the digestive system. But then they've still got to have these incredible immune systems because the food has got to go through their mouths. So you can imagine how incredibly tough these animals are compared to us. And I imagine their white blood cell count is probably incredibly high. And it's not unknown for hyenas to get diseases. So they can get things like rabies or TB, but they do not get any kind of infection or food poisoning from what they eat. I have seen hyena diarrhea before, so that's not to say that things might not disagree with them. And hyena diarrhea, as many of the regular viewers will know, their scat turns white after a while due to the high calcium content from eating the bones. And when you look at hyena diarrhea, it actually looks like somebody spilt a tin of white paint. It's actually quite incredible to see. And the first time I saw it, it took me a really long time to work out what on earth it was. Now the two little cubs are still not that interested in really eating meat as a primary part of their diet. You can see they've both gone off and lay down. They're not doing very much, just doing a bit of grooming. And they're getting to the age now where we can start to think about what their sexes are. It's very, very difficult to tell. And I know that Lisa was wondering about this little one in front of us, and whether or not it's a male or a female. So I mentioned earlier, I think this is the oldest cub. I have been away for a while, so it gets a little bit more tricky to tell. And as we're looking at it, Lisa, it's going to be very difficult, especially because it doesn't have a sibling that it interacts with. They've lifted their heads up, they're watching a hyena that's coming in. We're going to see, hopefully, some nice greeting between them, depending on where this hyena goes. Sorry, Lisa, I will get back to your question. I just want to see what happens here. Just duck out of the way. Whoop, there we go. So we've got a big scar on the back above the shoulders. And what looks like a fresh cut on its neck. You just see again, yeah, probably a hunting injury. Approaching very, very cautiously, but I think it might be mommy of the twins. There we go. That's definitely an affectionate greeting. Having a sniff, what was probably happened sometime during a hunting experience. Oh no, maybe not mommy, but definitely a submissive adult, submissive even to that cub, and not interested in coming any closer to investigate that leg. So definitely a submissive, quite low-ranking member of the clan, not sure which one, although sneaking around the back to come and have a look. See where it's going. Oh yeah, it's coming around this side. You can see that body language as it's come in, tail down and ears back quite a bit, and approaching very, very cautiously. There we go. Perfect example of a genital sniffing greeting ceremony between hyenas. Cub assuming quite a dominant posture, both cubs with their tails up. Still a very friendly greeting. Completely ignoring the other adult female, looks like, with the leg. Not interested in following up on that. And off she goes, and it's almost definitely a she, into the bush, possibly to go and look for some more food. As I said, there's a bit of a scratch on her neck, but nothing serious, but probably something that was acquired during a hunting experience or something along those lines. Or maybe even just running through the bush and hooking it on a thorn. But it's not deep. And she's gone off now and disappeared. So let's see what these ones are up to. And let me see if I can get back to Lisa's question about the sex of the cub, the oldest cub. And as I mentioned before, it's very difficult to tell. And I know a lot of the regular viewers will be familiar with the fact that all hyenas either have a penis or a pseudo-penis in the case of the females. And what we start to look for is differences in the shape of the tip of that penis. With the young males, it's slightly more rounded. It gets easier once a female has given birth, because they do give birth through that passage. So it tends to split open and assume a very different shape to that of the male. But at this kind of age, it's very, very difficult to tell. The testicles haven't dropped yet, and the nipples aren't very developed, so it is still very tricky. And as I've mentioned several times before, the best way is probably to watch their dynamics. The difficulty with that, though, is that cubs also inherit the status of their mothers. So although a male will always be lower ranking, it just complicates things just that extra little bit. Now we strongly suspect that the youngest cub, which is the cub of the matriarch, who we haven't seen this morning yet, is a female, and that's just judging by the behavior. But it is a guess, because she could well be as dominant as she is just because her mother is the matriarch. And hyena cubs, as with any little animal, any baby animal, have to learn their behavior and where they stand in terms of social ranking. And this is the younger cub, giving us a perfect show of why it is so difficult to tell the difference. My guess, having just had that brief glimpse there, is probably that this younger one is a male, just looking at the shape. And not welcome. And Mom's just made it clear that that little one is not welcome to join in chewing on the bone. I'm not sure if you heard that. I mentioned earlier we heard some breaking branches. The hyenas certainly heard it. It was just an elephant trumpeting, probably about 500 meters or so north of where we are now, up towards the cut line with Buffle's hook. And not too concerned though. And if an elephant herd was to come through here, they wouldn't pay very much attention to the hyenas. The cubs would definitely run and hide, and the adults would probably move off. And the den site is very, very secure for little cubs. What will happen is that the adults will excavate it, so they'll make those nice big holes. But hyena cubs themselves are really, really good at digging, and they'll actually make tiny passages within the den that only they can fit into. So they'll go right deep as possible into the den so that most threats cannot reach them. Because even elephants coming through, although I said they won't pay too much attention to the den, I've seen elephants just out of possibly playing, possibly a slight aggression. I've seen them chase a lot of animals, including hyena. I've seen them chase lions a lot. So it would be worth, if these elephants come south, the cubs just ducking into the den. It's a nice, safe spot for them. So Sue, you were wondering if they are nice and safe and secure in their den, and they definitely are. It's not unheard of for lions to try and dig them out, but it's unusual. They're going to try and get right into those tiny little passages that the cubs have built. And as we've seen with these hyenas, it's one of the amazing things about these live safari, is that as far as I can tell, although I haven't seen the other twin, but in the time that I've been here, all of the cubs are still alive. So you can see how safe and sound these hyena dens are, and how well they work in terms of keeping cub mortality down. Anyway, I just want to say that I'm very, very happy to be back, and thank you all for your warm welcome. It is great to be here, and I'm very excited about the weeks to come. It is one of my favorite things to sit in the bush and spend time with animals that are as incredible as these are. However, it's time to see what Brent is up to. I'm going to leave you for now and be back with you a little bit later.
everyone. Sounds like you've been having an incredibly exciting time with Jamie at the hyena den, and lots of activity there, a lot more activity than we've got here. So basically 30 seconds after the lions walked past us, they flopped down. I hear a movement, and I've got Junior jumping up. And it is a grey morning, but definitely not a dreary one. And you'll notice now, as he's urinating, there's no even attempt to possibly scent mark, scrape. And he is growing incredibly quickly. And I still think he's got quite a bit of growing to do to catch up with those Birmingham boys. So while you've been gone, I got an update. All four of the Birmingham boys were seen this morning at Nkorho, and then there is a report of one male lion, young male lion, so it could be one of the Birminghams, with a lioness somewhere to the east of us on Torchwood. I'm not sure who that could be possibly, and I will keep my ears open, and hopefully we will get a bit more information on that a little later. And you can see, still, a few of them are still quite alert, even though they are resting. Sorry about that, guys. With this overcast weather, sometimes we do have a few technical difficulties. But as you can see, I mean, as you would have, those of you who were watching the sunset safari last night would have seen that they were very muddy and bloody, and they've cleaned up quite nicely, and Kevin has noted that. And Sandy from Indiana is wondering about the missing lioness, and the fact we've got a report of a lioness with a male to the east of us. She's wondering if it's not possible that she's mating with one of those young Birmingham boys. Sandy, it's unlikely. The missing lioness is one of the sub-adults. I still think she's a bit young to be mating. I don't think so. I mean, it's not impossible. The animals do things that we have no understanding of quite often, but I do not think she's old enough yet to be mating. I'm just going to pop around because I'm quite sure, hopefully the rest of the pride will go, as that lioness is doing, go join a little bit further down the track. So continuing on with that missing lioness, and there's a couple of possibilities about where she could have gone or what's happened to her. Of course, there is the very sad possibility that she has been killed by other lions, and at the the moment that is quite a strong possibility. The other is that she's just got lost, and it would be trying to find the pride. And with the Birminghams around, we saw that when Junior and one of the lionesses were separated, they weren't vocalizing, so they weren't roaring to relocate each other, because that roaring will obviously attract the attention, unwanted attention, of those Birmingham boys. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to find each other. Watch out there, Jeandré, we're going to get skinny. Around the head of them. Oops, how's that, Jeandré?
Welcome back. We do apologize for the technical issues that took you away from Brent. I'm just has been doing some moving of branches to make our entry and exit from this tent site a little bit easier. Managed to do it. Slightly, a couple of trees that have decided to make their home in the vehicle as well. A couple of twigs. I've left the hyenas. They were looking very peaceful. Just all lying down. They all went to sleep. So we're going to move on and see if we can find those elephants that were shouting a little bit earlier. They didn't sound too far away, so hopefully they're not across the north boundary. Definitely almost exactly to the north of us. Continue on our way to find these elephants. Brent's signal is back up and running, and for now we're going to cross back across to Brent, and I will catch up with you a little bit later, hopefully with some ellies.
Welcome back, everyone. Again, sorry for the gremlins. I think it could have a lot to do with this thick cloud bank above us. And while we jumped across to Jamie for a few minutes, we're chatting about the missing lioness, and there's a report of a lioness with a Birmingham boy in Torchwood, and Paul was wondering, could that be the beginning of forming of a new pride? Paul, again, it could be. I don't know which lioness that is. I think it's very unlikely that it's the young Nkuhumas sub-adult. I would say she's too young to be mating, and probably not a good idea to hang around the Birmingham boys, even one of them. But it's unlikely. It could be a female from somewhere else, and I will try to get hold of Craig and see if he knows where that lioness is from. There we go. Fortunately, the lions seem to be listening to me, and I said they would probably all move to this spot. Oh, she's going to climb the termite mound. You can see how she slants her back and tries to hide. Not really, but even when she's just walking up a termite mound, she can't really help it. And using that as a nice vantage point, see if there's any possible prey. I'm just going to try to get you guys in a good spot. It's quite disconcerting having a lion look down on you. So it's only Junior left at the back now. We're using the termite mound to see if there's any potential prey species up ahead. Unfortunately not. Now let me try and get hold of Craig quickly. And flop. Give us back in that gap. So when Jeandré. Craig. Craig, do you have any idea which Mafazi is there? Which part it's from? Sorry, but it seems like the weather is playing havoc with our radio comms as well. So I will try to get that update from Craig to see who he thinks, or which pride that lioness that is with one of the Birmingham boys comes from.
Welcome back, and again we apologize for poor Brent's signal issues, but as you can see, we did indeed find the elephants fairly quickly, probably about a minute after I last saw you. Unfortunately, they are in a very, very thick block, and they are moving further into the thick block, and I suspect, although I'm not too sure, I've never seen the herd before with Mr. Wrinkly Bottom, the famous Mr. Wrinkly Bottom. I have heard plenty about him, but I believe that his mother has fairly straight downward facing tusks, which seems to match up to one of the females who's tucked away in this block. She's right at the back there, and as you can see, it is a thick block. Now on a day like today, as soon as we drove in, they were all very much on high alert, and it is incredibly windy today. And it puts all of the animals on edge, but it's particularly noticeable with elephants. So I'm not going to go trying to crash through into the block to try and get a better view of them. It's only going to upset them. But that is the female that I thought might be Mr. Wrinkly Bottom's mother. I could stand corrected. I've never seen them before. I've only heard descriptions. There are 2 youngish calves in this herd that I saw, which also is a good indicator that I shouldn't go trying to follow them in, especially with all of the vocalizations that we heard earlier. They might be slightly grumpy because of the wind, which is an emotion I share with them. Also, I'm not a particular fan of windy days. Hello. It's okay. You can see, very camera shy today. Lots of drongos shouting off in the distance. They're following behind the elephant herd and catching all of the insects. Oh, and that weeping wattle, or the toilet paper tree, Cultiforum tree, is taking a serious beating. See how incredibly useful that combination of trunk and tusk is to pull it loose. And then putting it into the mouth, probably after the bark. So we'll probably see it come out the other side, stripped away of the bark layer. Amazing to see how coordinated these elephants are in that respect. There you go, it's starting to appear. And just shaving away the bark. So, needs to reposition. And imagine how incredibly tough their mouths and their teeth must be. I know it's a point that's regularly raised. This isn't even a thorny tree, but it's one that I've noticed that they've been targeting quite a lot over the last 2 or 3 months that I've been at WildEarth. They seem to be really enjoying the weeping wattles at the moment. And this is some of the driest, not the driest I've ever seen the bush, but it is fairly close. I went back to visit the reserve that I used to work at when I was on leave, and the rivers that usually have a little bit of water in them still are completely dry. There's not even some wet sandy patches, it's just sand. I also went down to Natal, so the coastline of our country, and even there it is probably one of the driest I've ever seen it. So the illies have to work a little bit harder to find the nutritional value they need in the food. And I spent, oh there we go, there's a bit of a rumble, possibly to call the herd together to move off. That sort of communication, low frequency rumble very often is then followed by a herd movement, although none of them seem to be moving off just yet. Might just be a contact call, especially on a windy day like this, making sure that everybody is where they should be. Now, I mentioned that I've been down to Natal, and I spent probably less than 24 hours in my hometown, which is Johannesburg. I flew out to meet my parents and then came back and left the very next morning after we drove back from Natal. But while I was at home, I did have the opportunity to pick up my flute, which Jeandré made me promise to do, and I don't think he would have allowed me back into camp if I hadn't. So MJ and Robin, you were asking about that. Yes, I do have it. I have been trying to warn Mr. Henry that I haven't played my flute for probably somewhere in the region of 2 years. So I picked it up and I can still at least make a sound out of it. But I might need a little bit more time to get the coordination back. There's a slight difference between the coordination that I've been practicing over the last 3 years, which has involved driving, using pangas and using rifles. And now to go back to playing the flute might take me a little bit of time. I will do my absolute best. And as I'm sure you can imagine, it is very intimidating to play along with somebody of Mr. Henry's talent. And I swear it's getting colder as the wind's blowing. We're still targeting this weeping wattle, having a nice snack. Now we've been sitting with this young Ellie. Looks to me like a young female. Oh, you can see how heavy the sky looks. I really feel like we're about to be rained upon. But let's have another look at this female, because Kevin's picked up something that I didn't. And Kevin was wondering if this Ellie might be pregnant. And I just want to have a double check. I didn't notice, but the stomach does seem to be... Now, elephants carry their pregnancy very high up, so it doesn't hang low where you might expect it to. Creates that bulge up the side just in front of the hip bones. And this individual definitely has that. And Kevin, that was very observant. I think you might be right. Could well be. Maybe in the next few months we will have a new addition to this herd. So if she is pregnant, she's going to need all of the nutrition that she can get. And that's a 22-month pregnancy, and then carrying a sort of 100-kilogram fetus by the end of it. So you can imagine the toll it takes, even on an animal that is as large as an elephant. It's a physically demanding process, and they invest a lot of time and energy in the upbringing of their little babies, which to me is one of the reasons why I find baby elephants one of the most special animals to spend time with. Baby elephants and baby rhino, I think, are probably my favorite young animals. They are so entertaining. And there is quite the bitter wind happening as we're sitting watching these wonderful ellies. And you saw how heavy the sky looked. And Camira, it's not a silly question at all. We don't get snow here. It will not snow in the Lowveld. Highly, highly unlikely. It's never snowed in my time here. Typically, South Africa does get snow, especially on the mountains during winter. And this wind makes it feel like it should be snowing. I think most of the snow on the mountaintops will have melted by now. It's the end of our winter. But it does snow every year on top of the Drakensberg Mountains in the central part of the country. And that cold wind blowing across the tops of the icy mountains is what brings these rather chilly and rather late cold fronts across to us. And in my lifetime in Johannesburg, it snowed, I think, 2 or 3 times. And when I say it snows in Johannesburg, Johannesburg is very, very high in terms of altitude and also very dry in winter. So when it snows, it's not really snow like other countries or like Canada or Europe might experience it. It's kind of this tiny little layer. But the excitement involved, the last time it snowed, I think I was still at school. Or no, the first time it snowed, I was still at school, and the entire school shut down so that all of us could go out and play in inverted commas, the snow, which was probably at most an inch thick. But definitely not a silly question, but it won't snow here. The Lowveld is too well protected. It's not the right type of weather conditions. This little female has been given us quite the demonstration on feeding. I'd like to just sit and watch her for a moment, listen to the sounds of her crunching and the wind blowing. Now this sighting has been such a treat. At least we've had one ellie who's nice and visible. Our However, most of the herd have moved off into the center of the block. And from what little I can see of them, they look like they're going to sleep. They're just standing very, very still, barely even feeding, although this female is still crunching away. Now, I know that there has been lots of excitement as to what happened on the Arathusa Dam camera last night, and a big thank you to all of the viewers who have shared that information with me. I was pretty much dead to the world last night. I would never have known otherwise. But the viewers are telling us that it looks as though Shadow made a kill on the camera, killed a duiker, dragged it under the deck, got Madiba, as he is now known, then got chased off possibly by hyenas, and there was some drama between hyenas and the hippos. But really a very interesting evening that was happening on the Arathusa Dam camera, which is one of those special things about those cameras. Now, I'm not too far away from Arathusa, and I'm very curious to see what's happening. However, just to warn you in advance, this very cold weather and this very windy weather has actually played havoc with our signal. So if we do occasionally go to black screen, please bear with us and stay with us, because we will be back up and running. We might just experience the odd technical fault as our repeaters are on solar charge. So they have to be manually charged now without clearly any solar. So just be patient with us, and for now we're going to cross across to Brent so that I can go and see what on earth has been happening up on Arathusa. I'll be back with you a little bit later.
So we're still here with the Nkuhumas. Again, we apologize for the gremlins at play, but this weather is going to play a bit of havoc with us. As you can see, the wind's picking up now. The lions have not moved very much at all, and one lifted its head very briefly, then plonked it down on the rump of the other. Quite a cute little shot, so we're going to have a quick look at that. And see, nice pillow. You can see one lioness in the back, his head up, and she might have heard something down towards the waterhole. She's staring in that direction. And Junior's lying off to the left, but I don't think she's looking at him. We can't see anything, so I think she probably might have heard something, or she's seen something moving at a great distance on those open areas opposite the waterhole. I'm just going to try to grab my binoc. Let's see if I can see anything there. She doesn't look as interested as she was a few seconds ago. No, I can't see anything. Maybe she heard something. Check the front line for
Welcome back, guys. And again, the signal with the weather is playing absolute havoc with us. And we are currently on Bboys cut line, so I'm making my way. The cut line is quite a good place to start. It's always useful to have a look for tracks. It's a nice big road, and it gives us an idea of what's been happening during the night and who is where. Although it does sound like most of the lions in the area have been accounted for on other properties apart from the Nkuhumas. I'm just double checking. It also gives me the opportunity to move quite fast down the cut line to see if we can find out what's been happening on Arathusa. Oh, hello. Sorry, little one. Oh. Baby giraffe just popped out into the road. There's your mommy, little one. See if I can sneak forward just a fraction so that we can have a clearer view. Quite a tiny little youngster, probably about 3 months old or so. Okay, little one, I'm not coming any closer. Ah, there we go. Here we go. And you can just see in the corner of the screen, there's mommy, looks to be. And what a nice surprise. Very young little female giraffe. You can see the tufts of hair on the top of the ossicones. And I love baby giraffe because they just look so disproportionate to the normal adults. The necks are slightly shorter and the legs look so much longer. And they're adapted that way specifically so that they can still suckle, but also keep up with their mothers. So they can't be too tall, but they've got to have long enough legs to keep up. So the neck grows at a slightly slower rate than the rest of them. Let's see if we can sneak forward a little bit. It's very common to see the mothers of young giraffe feeding slightly further away from their babies. And I've read theories that state that it's just a good obviously open area like this where the little ones are very clearly visible. And at this sort of age, this little baby is very, very vulnerable to predators. But mom looks to me to be quite an older giraffe and probably very experienced. Oh, there you can see the size difference. She's probably raised a couple of calves in her life. This definitely wouldn't be her first. And if there was any kind of threat to the little one, she would defend it very vigorously. And a kick from a big giraffe like this could easily kill a lion if it got it in the right place. You see, the calf is very alert, just listening, probably actually listening to the elephants crashing through because it's looking in that sort of direction and into the wind, having a good smell. And we've got such a nice, it's not often that we get to see them so perfectly contrasted in terms of size and color. But there you can see the nice pale color of a 3-month-old giraffe versus the dark spots of the mother, who could well be or even over 10 years old. It's hard to tell, but I would say this is a very mature cow. Hello, little one. Oh, you're so cute. Now, giraffe are, to see them on their own like this is not unusual. They're not herd animals necessarily. They might congregate with other giraffe that they might meet along their travels and stick with them for a day or two and then move off again on their own. So they don't have set herd structures in any way. The mother will lead the calf around wherever she wants to go, and possibly meet up with other giraffe. But it's always useful to have more than one set of eyes, especially out in the open like this. I haven't seen any other giraffe. And as we've seen already, that baby is starting to eat solids. It's important with all the baby antelope species that they grow very quickly and that they shift onto solids as fast as possible. Having a look at this mother and calf, Rena was a little bit worried as to whether or not she looks skinny to us. I don't think so. She's not in peak. I would say you're right. She's not in peak condition. The calf is looking very, very healthy, so the calf is absolutely fine. The adult female might be a little bit underweight, but not very. No, she actually looks okay. It is going to be a tough time for all of the herbivores out here because, as we've mentioned quite a bit, it is very, very dry and there's not much in the way of nutritional value at the moment. But very, very soon, I've seen lots of knobthorns flowering. Soon they're going to start getting their fresh leaves, and that's when giraffe and elephant have the best time of things because they can reach up to the tops of the new growth of the knobthorns. And the rest of the browsers will have to wait for elephants to push down the trees so that they can nibble on the top new green leaves with the best nutritional content. There you can see mom moving off, and baby is going to follow. That was quite a nice surprise, but we still have to continue quite a distance to get to Arathusa, and I'm going to head on my way. And for now, I know that Brent's signal is back up and running, so I'm going to send you back across to Brent, and I will catch up with you once I've made it to Arathusa.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, the only movement is that lioness's head falling off her pillow, but she doesn't seem to mind too much. Other lioness is still up, still looking towards there. I've had a few looks with my binoculars, still can't see anything. So, lioness has found her pillow again. Again, guys, big apologies for the gremlins that are invading from the above. These are particularly nasty gremlins this morning. It looks like I can hear a squirrel alarming, and two of the lionesses are listening quite intently in that direction. So, for those of you who were watching the sunset safari with Scotty D yesterday, and were lucky enough to follow them while they were after those zebra, Anna Marie is wondering how far we are from that position. And we're probably about 3-4 kilometers from where they caught that young zebra.
sooner, then I've had a chance to get to Arathusa. Again, weather playing havoc with poor Brent's signal. And I swear it's dropped about 10 degrees since I first started this morning, especially now that I'm driving a little bit faster to try and get to Arathusa. I'm trying to take a little bit of cut the corner through Djuma because Triple M, the main boundary, is quite a regularly used road, which means that it's full of corrugations. Corrugations are those bumps, little bumps in the road that build up when people travel at high speed along dirt roads. And it makes for an unpleasant journey at slow speeds. Definitely jiggles the camera around more than we would like. So I'm cutting the corner, try and get to making our way to Arathusa. And it seems as though Brent's signal is back up and running, which means I can go nice and fast and even take Triple M while you are with him. I will send you back across to Brent again and catch up with you a little bit later, possibly in the next 5 minutes.
Welcome back, everyone. It's just as frustrating for us as it is for you, but we do apologize. Hopefully our tech geniuses are making a miracle plan at the moment. But we were chatting about where the zebra kill was last night. It was about 3.5 kilometers from here. And 16-year-old Kari from sunny and very tropical Costa Rica would like to know, would they ever injure themselves while fighting over food? Well, Kari, they do quite regularly. Normally it's not the most serious injury, but it is possible for a serious injury to happen when they're fighting over food, especially if they are very hungry and the kill is very small. So it is possible. I have seen it before, specifically when I saw a very large pride of lions, over 30, fight over one impala. And that gets very, very violent, and they can do themselves an injury. That's why when they are not feeding, lying like they are at the moment, and that social grooming are very important to keep those pride bonds close and tight. On where exactly these lions are, we found them this morning at the Djuma Waterhole, thanks to a lot of updates from you guys who've been watching. And Kathleen is wondering how far we are from the Djuma Waterhole right now. Kathleen, probably not more than 100 meters, 150 at the most. We're just to the north of the Djuma Waterhole, so for those of you, let me try, well, slightly northwest from the camera itself. So if the camera is facing straight onto the little puddle of water, we are to the left slightly, so straight across and slightly to the left, probably about 15 degrees to the left. They are looking quite content, and they're resting at the moment. I was hoping they might be on the hunt, on the prowl in this cold, windy weather. They might still during the day. I definitely keep an eye on that Djuma cam in case some poor, unsuspecting antelope or buffalo meanders down.
Apparently Brent's signal still playing up, and I was just asking the wildebeest if he was feeling the raindrops that I've just got a couple of on my face, which is good. We need the rain. would have been nice if it could have held off for another hour and a half. It's definitely a drop or two. Nothing too serious just yet. And I'm just on Impala Road, coming up to Impala Clearings. It's always a good place. It's a nice sandy road, so great for looking for leopard tracks. With the added advantage that it takes me directly towards Bobthorn Link on Arethusa. Of weather does make life just a little bit more tricky, obviously with all of our signal issues. Oh, that raindrop went straight in my eye. It's okay, I can still use the left one. And Teresa, you've picked up on how windy it is. Apparently it sounds like waves for you guys, and it is very, very windy, and I dread trying to brush my hair out later. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. But still beats any day for me in a town or a city, even if it is very chilly, very windy, and the raindrops fall in my eye. Hello, Buffles. Hello, Buffalo. Looks to be... This is a small... I don't know if this is a small breeding herd or the front of a breeding herd. There's definitely a couple of females here. We've got males in front of us. At first I thought it was just one of the Duggar boy herds, but there are a couple of females wandering around. And there's a little calf as well. And, oh, that buffalo is looking very, very skinny. Sure. That is not a healthy looking buffalo. You can see the hip bones, the pelvis sticking out terribly. And that one either has an injury or has one of the diseases that are quite common in buffaloes. Possibly TB, but definitely not a healthy buffalo. Now apparently there was a massive breeding herd with Scott a couple of days ago on Triple M. I'm not sure, this could well be the same one. Obviously I have not really been out and about over the last few days, so I'm not too sure. But there's definitely a couple of calves and a couple of females, so it could be that the rest of the herd is either just across there or further into the block. I just want to move forward a little bit, see if we can get a better view. There's not as much noise as I would usually associate with the 100-strong herds that we get around here. I'm not going to push too much closer. I don't want to startle this sick buffalo more than necessary. Already under huge pressure. This looks like a female to me. There you can see, very, very unhealthy looking. And could well be next on the lion's menu. Lots of bird noise. The drongos are making plenty of noise. And so are the oxpeckers. There's a couple of calves coming through as well. I'm just trying to sit and listen and see if I can hear which side the rest of the herd is on. They do definitely seem to be crossing across from west in an easterly direction. So the rest of them might be on the other side on Arathusa. Here we go. Little calf, probably in the region of 3 to 4 months old. Buffalo don't have a strict breeding season, but when the rains start to come from sort of the end of November all the way up into the end of March, we'll see a massive increase in births. I'm hoping that the wind that's blowing, that you can hear so strongly, is going to blow these clouds away for good. Although all reports seem to indicate that we're going to be in for cloudy, chilly days over the next few days. And the rest of the herd is probably coming across from Arathusa. Very quiet. Not much mooing going on as we usually hear. Could be because of the wind. Here we've got a nice, healthy female. See what buffalo should be looking like. Now, in this area, there's always the possibility that all of these animals carry TB, or tuberculosis, and for the most part, it doesn't affect them too seriously. They might shorten their lifespan slightly unless it really becomes active. Now, I mentioned that this thin female might be stricken with TB. She could also have something like corridor disease, or the swelling around the membranes of the heart. She could also just be very, very old and struggling with her teeth. And I mentioned that she might well become lion food in the next few days, just because she is in such bad condition. Her stomach also looks very distended, which makes me wonder about it as well. She could also have some kind of cancer or growth in her abdomen. But if it is TB and she does get eaten by lions, Gerry van der Walt was wondering, if they eat her, will they then catch TB? And it is a possibility if they hunt her and take her down. I have heard reports that animals will know and try to avoid animals with TB, but I think that's more in the case of rabies or anthrax cases, where predators will avoid them and avoid eating them. With TB, the lions could well get it. It does pass between the different species, and it will be usually carried in the mucus or the saliva of the animal and pass through. So Gerry, I hope that answers your question as to whether or not it transmits between lions and buffalo. It will, and it does happen. And there's always a possibility with any of the animals in this area that they may be carriers of TB, might not necessarily be active. Now, it is wonderful to spend time with breeding herds of buffalo. However, I know that Scott had them a couple of days ago, and we still have a mission to get to Arathusa and find out what's been happening on that side and whether or not the guides have relocated Shadow and Madiba with their kill. And for now, I'm going to leave this buffalo herd, and while I make my way across to Arathusa, across Triple M, I'm going to cross back across to Brent and his Nkuhumas pride, and I will be back with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. Again, huge apologies for the gremlins we are facing this morning. We are still with the Nkuhumas, who have not moved a muscle. And we did hear from Tammy, one of our zoomies, that there might be a hyena moving towards us. So I have been keeping an eye for that. Thanks for that update, Tammy. I do appreciate it. But at the moment, the lions are very much flat cats. So I'm going to put it through to you guys. Should we stay or should we go? I'm not sure if they're going to move. We can definitely come back later and drive to check. Maybe we should go see if we can find something else. So you guys send through whether you would like to stay or go to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. Go look at that lioness with her back to us, Jeandré to the right, on her flank there. You can see what looks like some scars. A little bit, rump rather than flank. Yeah, that looks like a definite bite mark. And I think that was there before I left, and it looks like it has healed quite nicely. Again, it's very difficult to judge whether that's come from feeding or from an argument with the Birmingham boys. I think that doesn't look like too serious at all, so wouldn't worry about that at all. As we can see, these are very much flat cats at the moment, and Angie from Portland in Oregon is wondering, are lions mostly nocturnal? Do they sleep during the day? Do they hunt at night? Well, actually, lions are opportunists. They are hunted any time possible, but generally they do hunt at night more than they do during the day. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Well, today is probably not one of those examples, but they have a lot of trouble dealing with heat. So they generally move around a lot more in the cooler times because their body is much better able to deal with the heat. They're unable to sweat, and that is why they generally will rest during the day and they'll pant and cool down that way. There's another slightly more complicated reason, and that is due to evolution. Lions and humans actually we are what we are because of lions to a degree, and lions are what they are because of us. So lions are the dominant nocturnal predator. We are the dominant diurnal predator. So we evolved to not compete at the same times. And human beings are one of the only animals that is able to run a marathon and deal with excessive heat. So we are able to, by sweating and by putting water on our heads or whatnot, we have a bunch of various methods that we can deal with heat that are not available to a lot of the animals. So about 200,000 years ago is when we came into being in our current form, and we evolved into what is now Homo sapien, which is what we are currently. and lions became Panthera leo. So at that time, there were giant lions and saber-toothed cats, as well as giant hyenas, which were about the size of a waterbuck, so completely massive. And hyenas also fill in with the evolution. They're also about the same age as us and lions. And very interesting enough that lions became the only social cat because they are competing with us, and also because they're competing with these solitary large other predators. So obviously, as a group, you had a much better chance of defending against a large solitary predator. So they've developed that social structure also to compete with the other social predators around, which are hyenas and us. So at about that stage, at that time, in terms of large predators, all these different social predators evolved, and all formed different niches in the environs. The lions definitely became the kings of the dark, kings and queens of darkness, and us of the light. And hyena developed into that very unusual niche that they fill, which was somewhere between us. They are also predominantly nocturnal, and that is also, again, to more than likely avoid us a lot more, because hyenas do have a much better system at dealing with heat. Their bodies are much more capable of dealing with heat than the lions, and they do utilize water pans and stuff like that to cool off. But hyenas pretty much have been scavenging off us and off lions and off all the other predators for a very long time. And you will notice when you are on foot or walking that hyenas are not nearly as scared as lions, for example. Lions will take off like a bad smell when they see you walking on foot, whereas hyenas will move away from you, but they're not particularly worried. They sort of know you can't catch them. And at night, if you chase a hyena away from around the campfire, he's trying to steal the rubbish bin, which happens relatively often out here, he'll just run 10 meters and then just stop and turn around and look at you. So very interesting how evolution has put us all in very different little niches. Okay, so guys, you have spoken, and we shall listen. The majority of you say it is time to move along, see what else we can find. And while we do that, Vince from Texas is just wondering what my thoughts are on the Birmingham Coalition and how they're taking over and what's going on with the lions in the Northern Sabi Sands at the moment. Let's just see if I can sneak through this gap quickly. We'll go past Junior on the way out. So over the last few weeks we've been really privileged to be right sort of in the center of a pride or a coalition takeover, and the Matimba males have sort of come to an end of their reign. Amazingly enough, I saw in an update that one of the Matimba males was seen south of the Sand River, and as far as I know they've never really gone that far. So unfortunately, as far as I know from the other lions around, that if he keeps on in the direction he was heading, he's going to get a very unpleasant surprise of another coalition of males down there. So I mean, I wouldn't say the battle is over as such yet, but I would definitely say, well, the war has been won. The battles might not be over. There might be still quite a few battles that happen. But I do think if the Matimbas are pushing that far south now, it is unfortunately game over for them. And that's not to say they might come back and have another attempt. There we go. Good job there, Jeandré. Because what's probably going to happen is that they're going to end up down there, they're going to bump into another set of lions, and they're going to come running back up north and bump into the Birminghams. So I know for a lot of you who are big fans of the Matimbas, and there have been such great lions for us to watch on the safaris. Unfortunately though, their time at the top is over. And we must remember this is nature, and it is a good thing. It is a very good thing, because they are getting to the stage, if we take the sub-adults from the Nkuhumas and whatnot, who would be now almost getting to a stage, and they're getting close, not quite mating age yet, but if the Matimbas were to carry on for another year or two, there's a very good chance they would end up mating with what is possibly their daughters. So this is the reason that these violent takeovers happen, and it's to try to keep genetic diversity, and that's nature looking after itself. But back now to the lions specifically here. The Birminghams have the potential to become quite a nice and dominant coalition for an extended period, being 5 lions. But in saying that, often with these larger coalitions, they will split, and 2 or 3 will stay in this area, another 2 will stay in that area, which happened with the Matimbas. There's the northern Matimbas and the southern Matimbas, and as happened with the Nkorhos, who are one of probably the best known of the coalitions. And although the Nkorhos seem to hold territory alongside each other, and when there was trouble in the land, they did come to each other's aid. And the Matimbas seem to have drifted so far apart that another coalition of males snuck in the gap between them. But I mean, if we look at in terms of hectareage that the Birminghams have covered, they have gone quite a long way to the west to Ottawa. They were chased back by the Majingalans. So they haven't really ventured that far, and then the Majingalans, if I remember correctly, is still a 4-lion coalition, so a little bit more imposing than the 2 Matimbas. But they seem to have definitely taken over Buffelshoek, Djuma, and they haven't gone on to Arathusa, but not as far west as the Majingis, and then also Torchwood to the east, Nkorho, Chitwa, that whole southeastern section as well. So in total, I mean, they've got the majority of the northern Sabi sands now, which, as far as my lion history, which might be a bit incorrect, so if it is, just let me know, goes that very traditionally the Matimbas. I know there's new males coming in from the Manuleti, and you never know whether these guys are going to actually make it or not until probably a good year in after the sort of initial stuff. And very interestingly, some new research with lions and also with leopards has found that first set of mating that these lionesses do is actually a false estrus, and they don't actually get impregnated from it. And the thought process behind this is that they're actually waiting for the lions to establish themselves. So there's no point in mating with someone who's going to be chucked out in 3 weeks and having cubs, because then the next set of cubs are going to be killed, etc. So they will actually almost do 2 full estrus cycles before they will actually get pregnant from the mating. So I think it's a very interesting coping mechanism. So guys, we might have a little bit of signal breakup as we go through this dip, but we'll go through it quite quickly. So it's amazing how nature's got these little sort of fixes amongst it to try ensure that the sort of next generation will survive. So the females will sort of wait. So now if the Birminghams start mating, as I haven't heard if they have been mating, I'm not sure. Jeandré, have they been mating in the last 5 days? No, we don't think so. Unlikely with the amount of upheaval, but you never know. Sometimes that, especially if there's a possibility of all the Styx cubs have been killed, the Styx lionesses will stop running from them so much and actually start trying to look for them and mate with them. So it's going to be very interesting to hear and watch what's going on. But that first coupling is probably going to result in no cubs, so I wouldn't get your hopes up for cubs in the next sort of 3 months. It will probably be the second, so we're probably looking, if the Birminghams are successful, their first set of cubs, and that's only if mating happens now. Let me say, if it happens sort of now, our first set of cubs are going to be sort of in the next 6 months. So really interesting how they are able to have these little controlling mechanisms that ensure survival of the species. So chatting about when we're going to have cubs. Janice from Wisconsin is wondering what is the gestation period of a lion. It's around 90 days, 90 to 100 days, so around 3 months. Very, very short. And you'll find that in a lot of your carnivore species, lion, leopard, wild dog, hyena and stuff, they have these very short gestations because there's a very high mortality rate amongst the babies. So they are able to do a quick turnaround of cubs if need be, if they do lose cubs. So Scott and James out on the tracking team mentioned that they had some female leopard tracks towards the east. So we're going to go slowly bumble into that area and see if we can find any tracks or hopefully find a leopard. We're not going to be seeing much general game in this cold and windy weather. They are much more sensible than us and they are hunkered down. Probably lying out somewhere in a thicket or whatnot, trying to keep out of the wind. Also with this strong wind, it's a bit more dangerous for the general game because their hearing is impaired and also their smell is impaired because the wind is very gusty. So they would try not move, and if they're ruminants, they will be happily chewing the cud and getting their nutrients that way. As it warms up, they probably will start moving out and feeding, but I think because of this cold weather, it's going to obviously warm up quite a bit later. So we were just chatting about a bit of evolution and the animals that used to roam this land before us. Anna Marie is just saying, wow, she didn't realize there were giant hyena. Strangely enough, Anna Marie, there were also running hyena or hunting hyena that were built far more slender, sort of much more similar to a wild dog, or even though they were hyenas and they were out-competed. They're obviously just one of those little failed branches on the evolutionary tree. But there were some incredible animals around in about that 500 to 200,000 years ago, and they have changed a lot. And strangely enough, the one who was there, seen it all, the impala, unchanged for 1.6 million years. Speaking of antelope, we've got what looks to be a kudu, or I can't really see through the bush, on the other side of this little drainage line. So we found one who's hungry enough to be out on the move. Wow, it looks like some inyala. Very fluffy inyala. And well spotted Jeandré. See, now they're in the drainage line. We're not getting a lot of that wind that you're getting up above on the crest, so a bit more protected, a bit warmer down here. Let's see. How's that there? A little group of waterbuck, and there's some inyala around. They're so fluffy, waterbuck. For me, out of all antelope species, they almost look like they're quite innocent. They're sort of very doe-eyed antelope with the freshly painted toilet seat on their bottoms. So down in this drainage line, a little bit protected from the wind and weather. Left of that waterbuck as well, and the camouflage is working quite well. Just make it out there through the thickets. We're going to move forward to have a look at the inyala that are probably out in the open. So I was hoping that the cold weather was over. Those of you who watch regularly realize I'm not a big fan of being cold. And the only time I can put up with being cold in the rain is when we're out here with the animals. And if there's no animals, then you won't find me leaving the comfort of a very warm place. Okay, so we're just going to pop around. I think it's going to be the best view around this gardenia that the Inyala are underneath. There we go. So it's quite nice. It's sort of in this arch of this gardenia tree. Sorry guys, I just got to be on the radio for a second. Koba's coming. Stations left the Nkuhumas Pride lying up to the north of Gari Dam. There's that 2-track that runs on the eastern side of that small drainage from Mvubu Road, probably 60 meters north from the Mvubu Road on that 2-track. And you can see that wonderful little chevron, that white across her nose. And there, if we have a look in her ears, we can see how many little ticks and whatnot are in there. And you can see she's very fluffed up. I know a lot of you would have heard this before, but a lot of the antelope species will do that. And what they're doing is they're trapping a layer of air between their skin and their fur. And what that does is almost like a blanket, so that air gets trapped there and the body heat warms it up and it creates a little insulative blanket around the animals. That's why on cold mornings they always look quite fluffy. Oh, and you can hear the wind that is above us. So we in this drainage line, we're not actually getting that gusting wind on us, but it is blowing in the trees above us, so passing over the drainage line. And that's probably why we find these animals here now nice and protected from that gusting wind. And Nyala is a browser, so as we watch them feed on the ground, it looks like she's actually eating grass, but she's not. She's picking leaves between the grasses. At this time of the year, obviously their feeding is going to be quite limited to what's around. Unlike impala and wildebeest that will be waiting for the beginning of the rains to give birth, Inyala actually give birth throughout the year. They do have peaks and troughs with the birthing, but generally they will give birth throughout the year. Let's just move forward a little bit. See that right on the edge of that sort of rise up above the drainage line, and I think they're going to continue to feed along along this edge. And we're going to leave them to do so and meander on, see what else we can find. Isn't that wonderful? We've just found this little spot protected from the wind and the cold, and we've got waterbuck and Inyala taking advantage of that. And you'll see now as we come up out of that, I mean, look at that now. I mean, you can hear it, you can feel it. If you look at the trees around us, a gusting wind, and we've literally moved 5 meters. I know quite a few of you are wondering about my fishing trip while I was away. Unfortunately, it was definitely not one of my most successful fishing trips that I've ever had, and I managed to only catch 1 fish. But it was still nice to be up in the mountains. On the last day I was up there, this weather came in and the fishing just went really bad. I think a lot of the fish I lost was due to my incompetence and not the fact that there weren't fish around. It's been a very long time since I fished for trout, and I've been doing quite a lot of fishing for saltwater fish on fly and whatnot, and out of pure habit over the last couple of years, I think this is probably the first time I fished for trout in about 8 years. I actually I saw the trout come up and take it, and I struck like I was striking into a tarpon and just snapped the line. But anyway, I managed to catch 1 semi-decent size, probably about just over 2 pounds, and we actually brought that back with us, and we ate it for dinner last night. Well, Jeandré ate most of it. He likes fish. I like catching them. So it's a good combination there. Oh, it's cold in this wind. And I feel for the cameraman because they're sitting even higher in that wind. I've at least got my bottom half protected by the car. So tough guy is our cameraman. We started the morning with a bang with the Nkuhumas pride, and Thelma is just letting me know that it's Happy Cat Month in the USA, and she also noted that it's probably Happy Cat Month every month out here on Djuma and Arathusa. And Thelma, I'd have to agree with you, it is definitely Happy Cat Month, if we can find them, of course, and we do try our best, but sometimes those happy cats are very sneaky cats. So with all the line dynamics happening at the moment, specifically the dynamics between the males, Sibo from Hammonds Crowd, nice to hear from you again, Sibo is wondering, is it been scientifically proven that males with black manes or dark manes are more dominant over the lighter maned counterparts, or is this just based on behavior? Well, Sibo, sorry, Sibo, I just saw something move there. It was a duiker, and it's moving at very high speed, so we'll carry on. So Super Cecil, there is an ongoing study where they're doing that with genetics at the moment. If I remember correctly, it's Dr. Craig Packer and Natalia Borrego from the University of Miami who are doing that at the moment. Oh, what have you spotted? Hello, well spotted, Jeandré. We have some wildebeest and waterbuck bulls. But carrying on there with that lion question, Super Cecil, is that so far in the initial studies it does seem to be the case, but with a lot of scientific papers, it's going to take a while before that is documentation's and it's got to go through lots of different academic things I don't really understand, so it's got to be checked and fact-checked and checked again. But hopefully, I do know both of the researchers are busy doing that, so hopefully maybe I can get a bit of a sneaky inside info on that. So, trying to just get a view of him. He's hiding in that woodland, and up here on the wind you can see the animal's a little bit less calm. They're not hanging around and they're moving away from us, and obviously with the wind they are feeling a little bit more vulnerable, and they're out on the crest here, so right in the wind. That wind gusting. So we're not going to hang around. They are not feeling too comfortable with this gusting wind. Even if we wanted to hang around, he's not hanging around, so that's a territorial wildebeest bull. Oh, there we go. Nice screenshot. And then off he goes. So, I just got a little update, and apparently the Matimba males have been found on Buffalo's Hook, not very far from the Djuma boundary, on a buffalo kill. So really, really interesting, that fact that one was south of the Sand River yesterday and is now already back up here, probably reunited with his coalition mate. And the Birminghams, from where the Matimbas are, or probably, I'm guessing, 8-9 kilometers. But if the vultures start descending on there, there's a big chance the Birminghams will spot that and head off towards those Matimbas. So very interesting. And as I was saying earlier, it's by this sort of, the war is by no means over. I think it'll carry on in dribs and drabs, but the battle isn't by no means over, but the war has been won by the Birminghams for now. Who knows if new males from somewhere else might arrive, but at the moment it is looking like that the Birminghams have almost completely removed the Matimbas, but as I say that, they're back. So interesting times ahead, and hopefully if they do come to blows and to a battle, it happens on Djuma. Like Aubrey's the one who found that. I'm just going to give Scott and James a shot to see where they left those female leopard tracks. Scotty, where did you leave those fuzzy Ngo tracks? Okay, copy. So confirm she came west to the north or south of that Hip Hop Falls junction. Copy, thanks very much. Okay, so Scott says those tracks came into this block here about 200 meters, so probably they're heading west. And they've checked around, but she might have still been moving. So we're going to go have a quick look around on Hippo Pools Road, which leads towards Biffle's Hook, Waterhole, and fingers crossed, either the tracks pop out and we're able to follow them to what's making the tracks, or we'll just find her without doing any of the tracking. While we continue to try to track this mystery female leopard, we're going to cross across to Jamie, who's with something a little bit similar to what we're looking for, but I'm not going to tell you who.
On a rather cold and windy morning in the Sabi Sands, it's still been quite an exciting event. We've had now 3 out of the big 5 plus hyena cubs, and we have a nice surprise for you, because I know that so many of you were interested in what happened last night on the Arathusa Dam camera, and we have a little bit of an answer to show you, and that answer is sitting tucked away and hidden on Magic Willie just south of the Bourbeen Pan. We have Shadow with a rather full looking belly, so whatever may have happened last night with her kill and with the hyenas, she has eaten. And what's even more special is that the now named Madiba, also previously known as Sindile, is probably about 500 meters from where we are now. I haven't seen him yet. He is somewhere just to the south of us, so somewhere tucked away in this drainage line, and we'll be going to find him in just a moment. But first, some special time with Shadow, who's decided to go flat, but I promise you it is Shadow. She did stick her head up as we came in. Now, for those of you who might be joining us and not too sure what I was talking about, we had reports that last night Shadow, and it would have been Shadow now that we've seen her and we can confirm it, killed a daker on the Arathusa Dam camera, went and fetched her year-old cub, or just older than a year now, whose name is Madiba, brought him back to the kill. Then there was some action with hyenas and nobody was quite sure if she'd lost her kill that she'd dragged under the lodge deck. But it seems as though whatever happened, she's definitely had something to eat at some point last night. We're seeing more and more independence being shown by little Madiba. When I left, during the time that I was on leave, I was closely following the saga that was happening with Shadow. She was mating first with Tingana, then apparently with the Anderson male. And she left Madiba on his own for quite an extended period of time. And to me, that was the last thing I expected. Now, I know that just before I went on leave, a lot of people were asking, because we had that sighting where we were following Shadow and her cubs' tracks, and Tingana was following after them. And one of the questions was whether or not he would be following her in order to mate. And at that point, I said absolutely not. It would be far too soon for Shadow to be mating. And this is for me a first. I've never heard of a leopard mating so soon with a year-old cub. but apparently it does happen because it did. And it did mean that Madiba was left on his own for quite a considerable period of time. I'm not sure how many days it was, but he was out on his own. And now you can see Shadow's decided to lie up here, and he's showing some independence and moving off into a different direction. Now, I'm just going to have a look around and see if maybe, as you can see, it's a very, very thick block. I'm just wondering if there's a way I can get in. I have to be very careful. There's a lot of young tambuti trees here, which we do not drive over. It does them. They're very, very important trees in terms of the ecosystem and keeping the soil together and protecting the grass layer, especially around these drainage lines. So I don't want to be driving over any of them. And unfortunately, I don't think that there is a way around to get a better visual, unless maybe I could creep. No, I don't think I can creep to the other side. We're just going to have to, at the moment, make do with a couple of spots. But great to see her, and a really nice way to do my first drive back at work, and we've had quite an exciting morning. Now, Madiba, or previously known as Sindile, and I'm still trying to wrap my brain around the name change. I think it's a brilliant name. Just have to get out of the habit of saying Sindile. He is, now I just have to think about the Arathusa geography for a moment. He is on Safari Donga South. So he is roughly in sort of that direction, probably about 500 meters or so. And we'll be heading off that way in a moment. He's somewhere tucked away in this drainage line. And we have the Arathusa guides to thank for finding him, and Mornay in particular. They located them a little bit earlier just as I came in. And I saw their tracks. They've actually done a lot of movement. So from last night when they were hunting around the dam camera, they then made their way all the way east towards Parallel Road South and wandered up and down there and then came in this direction. And it could be that if the kill was stolen, I'm not sure what time of night it was last night, but if it was stolen, it could have been that Shadow then had to go and hunt for something different. I would love for her to look up, but I think that the night's activities have exhausted her. And it is largely thanks to our many loyal viewers that we get to hear about these updates. Now, I was not awake at 1:50 last night, but for those of you who were in different time zones, Karen and Curious One, you were telling us all about what happened and the fact that the hyenas moved in, and then there was some conflict between the hippo and the hyena as well. So it sounds like a very action-packed night. It's now probably, I'm not sure what the time is, but probably around 8:30 in the morning, or 8:15. So it's been about 7 or 8 hours since, so plenty of time for Shadow to have gone and killed something and then moved on and tried to kill something else if it was killed by or stolen by the hyenas. Now, apparently, Ellen tells me that she did get to eat first before she went to go and fetch her cub. And I've just been listening to the off-roading sounds of other vehicles. So, where I thought he was is actually not the case. He's just a little bit further behind me. I'm sure that's other vehicles coming into the sighting there. And we will move across in that direction a little bit later. But it's very, very close to us. It sounds like probably about 300 meters away from where we are now. So those are the vehicles that are going in towards Shadow's son. least we know that she did get to eat something. It's always a bit harder to tell when a cat is lying down exactly how full they are, but that belly looks pretty round to me. And one of the most amazing things about having worked in this area now and having done this job for a couple of weeks, I did have that incredible sighting of Karula where she ate the entire steenbok in less than 20, well, maybe less than half an hour. And all that was left was the jawbone. And that was a couple of weeks ago. But it was a really interesting lesson for me as to exactly how fast a hungry leopard can consume a kill if they need to, and how little of it they will actually leave behind. It was just tufts of hair that she plucked and one jawbone. So it could be that when Shadow started feeding, she had plenty of time to munch her way through. Now I just want to take a moment to listen to the Game Drive channel. They're telling me that he's up and about, and I just want to hear exactly where he's going. That would explain the off-roading sounds that I'm hearing. Now I'm going to see if maybe we can enter that sighting. It could be that he's coming towards us, so I just want to double check on the Game Drive channel first. But let's find out what's happening, and then let's go and see what Madiba has been up to, and if he is on his way here. Let's see. Get a hold of the Game Drive channel, find out what he's doing. Mornay for Jamie. Any updates on what Madiba's doing, which way he's going? Okay, copy, perfect, thank you. I'll be making my way there. Copy that, thank you very much. Okay, so Mornay tells me that Madiba is also flat, so it must have been a different sighting that they were talking about. I'm listening with half a brain, but he is just a little bit away. So, since Shadow is fairly flat, and I'm sure you're curious to see how Madiba's looking and if he is as full as his mother is, let's leave her for now. I don't think she's going anywhere anytime soon, and go and see if we can find that little cub, who happens to be probably one of my favorite leopards. He was the first one I tracked on foot while I was here, and I've got a little bit of a soft spot for him. I think he's a character. She did not even lift her head. Now there's nobody at the moment with Madiba. They've all left the sighting. And so you get to join me as we go looking for him to find out exactly where he's tucked away. More and more background information about what went down last night at the Arethusa Dam camera. Now, Chris and Raisa tell me that both Shadow and Madiba had a good half an hour or so to feed on that Daker kill before it was possibly nicked by the hyena. So that's good. As I mentioned before, I've seen exactly how fast a hungry leopard can eat. Hopefully the hyenas didn't manage to steal too much of what was left. I'm hoping that the leopards got to enjoy as much of that Daker as possible. And it's not uncommon for hyena to steal leopard kills. And I know that Anna Maria's commented about Shadow and the fact that the hyenas so often seem to steal poor Shadow's kills. And it is interesting, the fact, and I know it's been raised by many of the other presenters, the fact that Shadow doesn't hoist her kills or put them up in trees as often as other leopards seem to. And that could well be why she is targeted in that way by hyenas. It's really, really important out here for a leopard, especially a female who's absolutely no match for a hyena, to make sure that that kill is up and out of the way. Why it is that Shadow doesn't do that, or doesn't seem to do that as often, I know she has done in the past, I really, really am not too sure. I don't know why it is that she seems to be so bad at doing that. Getting really, really close to where I picked up on Madiba, and I just need to make sure I don't miss him. Apparently he was lying up under a cluster of tambueti trees, which is a little bit tricky because there's lots and lots of tambueti trees in this area. It's basically like explaining that it's by the tree with leaves. Let's see. Apparently it was just by the pump house, which we just passed. Where is he hiding? Off here because there were vehicle tracks coming off the road. I'm just gonna stop and listen. Where are you hiding? Okay, game of hide and seek with little Madiba. Oh, there he is. I found him. He's there. He's just underneath the albizia, just down there to the right. You see him, Wium?
What? Could that be him?
Yeah, that big tree, the big dead one, just to the right of that on the ground. Yeah, it's to the right there. There he is. Okay, let's try and get a little bit of a better visual, but he is there. Very, very close to his mother. Now, I know that the fact that his mother disappeared off for so long to go and mate with the other males in the area must have been quite an interesting experience for little Madiba. It's a little bit too soon for him to have been independent. And I know that Lisa G was wondering if maybe it's encouraged a little bit of advanced growth and a bit more independence. So yes, Lisa, I think the fact that Shadow had left him for so long, he is old enough to hunt for himself, and I know that he never looked too hungry while he was on his own. It was definitely very early, and it would have been a chance for him to really develop his independence and his personality. Now, where is going to be the best view? He's tucked away there. Let me try and shift into low range. I don't want to push Jigger too far into the sand. It's because I know that our diff lock at the moment is sort of a little bit shaky. But let's shift forward ever so slightly and try and get a good view. And as I mentioned before, I can't drive over too many tambourtis. Obviously, if we stay in gear, I'm sure we can make it across this drainage line. There's not going to be any clear view of this little leopard that I can see. He is very tucked away. This is an awkward angle for Wium, I know. There you can see his hiding place. And little Madiba is giving us a wonderful, good lesson into how well leopard camouflage works, which they do seem to be very good at every now and again. Just wondering what the view would be like from the other side. Just want to see, there's another vehicle approaching, but I think it's a tractor coming past, not somebody trying to make their way into the sighting. Because if they are, they're going to find life a little bit tricky. That side's too thick. But great opportunity for us to know that both Shadow and her cub, Madiba, are safe and sound after the night's interesting activities. Sounds like they had quite the evening. Now, we're going to be brave about this. And make our way into this drainage line. I'm not going to push too much further in due to our somewhat shaky diff lock. But there we go, we've got a slightly better view. It always amazes me how comfortable these leopards are around vehicles. Just having a look. Now, you can see he's on alert slightly, he's just looking around. And after the night that they had, I don't blame him. And apparently when the hyena came in to steal the kill, it made no sound. And Curious One was wondering if that was normal, if that is the way that it often happens. And it's difficult to know in terms of that situation. I would say yes, it is probably normal, especially when one solitary hyena is coming in to steal a small, or if there's very little meat left, then it could well come in stealthily. Probably doesn't want to share with other hyenas or alert other hyenas of the clan to that fact that it had a kill or had stolen a kill. It could well be it was just going slightly into stealth mode. If it had been a bigger kill that they had stolen from a leopard or they had killed themselves, that's when you start to get the real giggly noises of the hyenas and the contact call between clan members. That's why they're known as the laughing hyena. The noises that they make sound very much like they're laughing, and that's very typical of feeding excitement. least we do have something of a view of what is probably, or who is probably, my favorite leopard. I think that's a decision I've made. I think he's going to be my favorite of the ones that I've seen so far, obviously. And it's so exciting to think that I've got so many other individuals to get to see and get to meet. I think my soft spot for him largely stems from the fact that he was the first leopard I tracked on foot here, and actually probably the leopard that I've seen the most while I've been working for WildEarth. Between his toes, that's what he's licking away. Now he's sitting fairly far away from where his mom is, and he's showing more and more independence, and that will continue to increase over the next few months. And we mentioned about Lisa's question as to whether or not he will have grown up a little bit faster or matured a little bit faster because of this. And I do think that will be the case. And what will be very, very interesting is if this mating was successful, so this last estrus session that Shadow had, whether or not she's then going to be due to have cubs in the next 3 months or so, in which case he really will have to gain a serious amount of early independence. Now, it's not uncommon for female leopards to tolerate their previous offspring around them whilst they have new cubs. And I know that there's even cases of older leopards having, I think it was one particular case that was told to me, where a grandmother leopard adopted the cub of her daughter, even though she already had a cub of a slightly different age. So it's possible for 2 cubs of different ages to be around together, but I don't think that would be the situation in this case. I think that Madiba is just a little bit too old for it to work out that way. I think that Shadow would keep separate from him, maybe tolerate him to join her at kills, maybe, with the younger cubs, but you would probably find that once she does have cubs, if she does have cubs, he will be out on his own and forced to look after himself far younger than would necessarily be the case in an ordinary situation. And he'll probably still hang around the area. He'll have to learn to hunt successfully for himself as often as possible. But I would be surprised. However, I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that there are chances of fertilization. It doesn't actually happen every time a female goes into estrus. So there is a possibility, and I would even say quite a high likelihood. With her first estrus after raising a cub, I think personally there's a high chance that she won't actually fall pregnant. So she'll still spend the normal amount of time with Madiba. I could, of course, stand corrected on that. It's entirely possible that I'm wrong, but just a personal opinion. I'm going to go with it's more likely that she won't conceive, that she will conceive. That's supposition and a guess, but I'll put it out there. And then she'll probably be mating again in a couple of weeks if she wasn't successful. So we'll know if she comes into estrus and she starts mating with other males in the next few weeks that this mating session was not successful. And as I mentioned before, if she does have if she is a successful mating and she does have cubs in the next 3 months, I don't think that he's going to go too far away from her. He's going to try and stay as close as possible and try and follow his mother to the kills. And it could well be that she would share them with him. I wouldn't say that's unlikely. I know that on the reserve I used to work at, occasionally we would see the female, one of the most relaxed females, and her oldest cubs who had since become independent. And I saw her with 2 young cubs and then the older cub not too far away. So it would be highly likely that he would stick around. And the females do tend to be much more tolerant of their male offspring as opposed to their female offspring. So he has got that in his favor. We'll be able to stick around. Possibly she might be a little bit more tolerant of his presence. Learnt in my experiences of tracking this particular leopard is that the best place to start looking for him is usually on a termite mound. And I know that Lisa, good morning, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. I hope that you are enjoying it as much as I'm enjoying my first drive back. Now I know that Lisa's mentioned that he's very often either out in the open or most often up on a termite mound. And that's definitely where I always start when I go looking for him. And at the moment he's tucked away in quite a thick drainage line. Now I will say that most of my leopard sightings in my life have been in an area like this with the leopard on the ground tucked away. But Sindile does seem to be the exception to that rule. And probably he's starting to feel a bit more secure. I think he likes the termite mounds because it gives him a nice view of whatever's been coming his way. And I think he's starting to feel a bit more secure. But it could also be that this wind and this weather is what's put him close to a drainage line. He's tucked away to hide away from this cold. And also the fact that with this wind, his senses are a little bit compromised. He might be feeling a little bit nervous and wanting to be hidden away in the thickest undergrowth he can find. That being said, I have seen him in a couple of drainage lines before, underneath tambuti trees or tucked away in this way. And there was one particular sighting where I actually left him a couple of weeks ago, tucked in basically just a monkey orange thicket. So I think it could be that it's slightly biased, the fact that we often see him on termite mounds or open areas, because it's just that little bit easier to find them when they are on termite mounds or open areas. I do think he does favor them, but there's probably a slight bias there, because it's easier to track and find them when they're in those kinds of places. It gets a little bit more tricky when you're looking in a drainage line like this one. And you will have seen as we drove in and we sort of had to really struggle and look to find him. And if he'd been in a slightly thicker area, we probably wouldn't have. But a very interesting point and a good observation. And it's one of the reasons that these live drives are so valuable, because you can learn by watching over the course of months and months, as opposed to just a couple of days. He's having a big clean. Maybe tidying up his fur from last night's feeding activities. And he really is a very good looking leopard. I think he's going to be absolutely breathtaking when he's reached his adult size. And already he's looking like he's grown in the 2 weeks that I haven't seen him. I noticed when I was following him just before I went on leave that he's already developing that dewlap flap of skin in the front and getting a powerful neck and shoulders. I think he's going to be quite a big boy. As we're watching him grooming himself and just using his teeth to just nibble actually slightly at his skin, and although we don't see it as clearly as we do on things like buffalo, he could well have ticks in that fur that he's just aiming to pull out and dislodge, because they will itch like crazy. So leopards will also be tick carriers, not the huge ones that we see on buffaloes, but some of the smaller ones. And grooming is a good way of getting rid of them. Spending a special time with little Madiba, or not so little Madiba anymore. He's getting to be quite a lot bigger. I know that everybody's a little bit concerned about what the future holds for him, especially if he does have to gain independence a little bit longer. Now apparently Karula has been a little bit more tolerant of her, or very tolerant of all of her male sons. Now Shadow is Karula's daughter, so hopefully that is what she's going to do, or that kind of behavior she's going to show Madiba over the next few months. She'll hopefully take after her mother and give him a little bit of a head start in life, even if she does have a new set of cubs. Anyway, we still have quite a flat cat, and I know that Brent has headed back towards the Nkuhumas pride, which is great to have on our property. And for now, we're going to go back across and see what they've been up to, and we'll be back again just a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, very little has changed here with the Nkuhumas. The only thing is Junior has come to join the rest of the pride, and they are all very tired kitties by the looks of things. So we did manage to find an update about those female tracks, that leopard tracks we're looking at. They do look like it was possibly Karula, but unfortunately they went into a very thick drainage section, and we weren't able to follow any further. But also I got some more very interesting updates from the other guides while we were away, to do with lions. And since we're sitting with lions, I think it's quite appropriate we chat about them for a little bit. So as we said, the two Madiba boys have been found on a buffalo kill. Now, interestingly enough, yesterday there was one Birmingham male on that buffalo kill. So the two Madiba have chased a single Birmingham male off that buffalo kill. That single Birmingham has been found with a Styx lioness, and I'm not 100% sure. Obviously, I didn't see it myself, and unless I see it myself, I always a little bit cautious about information. And they think it's the lioness that has the remaining cub. but she is trying to mate with the Birmingham male, and that's very interesting, and that makes me think possibly that remaining cub might have unfortunately passed along and gone somewhere else, no longer of our world. And apparently the Birmingham male is having no interest. He's not trying to kill her or whatnot, but he's not interested in mating with her at the moment. So there's very interesting little dynamics happening at the moment. So very interesting. So we know that that lioness is an adult lioness with him, that I think is the Styx lioness who's had the cub. So it is not the missing sub-adult from the Nkuhumas. As we spoke about a bit earlier, I did think that lioness was too young to be hanging around with the Birminghams. Very comfy lions. It's quite a good spot for them to rest up. There is a possibility of animals as it warms up heading down towards the waterhole. But in this cool weather, there is a possibility they might move during the day. I hope not, and hopefully they are here for the sunset safari as well. But what a great first day back for Jamie and myself. We've had the Nkuhumas right off the bat, and then Jamie has had Shadow, Sindile, hyenas playing around the hyena den, and well, some elephants. So I think Jamie's definitely won the battle of the drives there. We've had some sleepy kitties and some inyala, but it's been great to be back, and what a nice day to come back to with so much happening and so many animals around, and also fascinating to listen to what's happening with all the lions around us. So really, really interesting time to be here. Unfortunately, apart from moving about 150 meters, our lions haven't done much today, and hopefully they'll change that on the sunset safari and they'll be a little bit more active. But it is going to be, as I've been saying, really interesting to see what's going to be happening with all the lions at the moment, and of course to keep up in touch with the leopards. Be really nice. I heard Mvula is not too far south of us, and I don't think I've seen Mvula in an age, but he is on a Dyker kill on about 3 kilometers south of our sort of eastern and southern boundary junction. So he seems to be doing well. I haven't heard any updates about quarantine or Kunuma, but I'm still hoping in the next little while I'll hopefully get to see the Anderson male. Oh, no, just I thought it was just a stretch. I just heard the grass moving. Here we go, and Junior's got his head up a little bit, and we can see how he's starting to get a bit older, and you can see the darkening of his mane happening. Now, normally at this age he would have left the pride, not always, but normally, but possibly because of all this turmoil at the moment, he's found a gap to hang around with him a bit longer. Where we can see his belly, I'm pretty sure he would have eaten the majority of that zebra last night, being so much physically bigger and dominant over the females. It will definitely be sad to see him move along his way when his time comes. And hopefully he will find some other nomadic young males and form a successful coalition. So often male lion coalitions are thought to be brothers, and in recent years this has been disproved time and time again, that quite often the majority of them are unrelated males. So chatting about male lion coalitions, Blair is wondering, and she said she's heard some guides say that there's no dominance between the different coalition members, and others say there is. Is this just a different opinion? Well, Blair, if I had to throw my opinion in there, and the opinion of most lion scientists, is that there is a definite hierarchy amongst male lion coalitions, and it is changeable. So certain lions might be dominant at the beginning and not at the end, but there's definitely a hierarchy amongst male lions, and it is, if you spend a lot of time with them, it is quite easy to work out who is dominant and who is not. But as we head towards the end of this sunrise safari, thank you very much to everyone for all the welcomes back, and it's been a fantastic start, and I look forward to quite a few more, and hopefully a little bit more than sleeping lions next time, but still nice easy way to start. Didn't have to track or work too hard. And thanks for all the welcome backs, thanks for all the questions, guys, we really do appreciate them. And don't forget to join us for the sunset safari. Hopefully the Nkuhumas will be on the prowl and out after some buffalo or kudu or whatever might be out there. So from Jeandré and myself here on the Wendy, thanks for joining us, and we will leave you with the lions for a few seconds before you cross back to Jamie and Sindile.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining me on my first safari live drive back in business. And what a fun drive it has been, and I cannot think of a better pair of leopards to come and spend some time with than Shadow and little Madiba. Definitely great to be able to follow up on them after the dramas of last night and what was happening around the Arathusa Dam camera. Now, over the next few months, it's going to be very interesting to see how this particular situation plays out with little Madiba in terms of his development and his personal growth, and whether or not he actually has to gain a little bit of independence far sooner than any of us had expected him to have to. And I know that I personally, while I was on leave, was desperately following the story of how long Shadow had left poor old Madiba on his own while she was off on her various relations with the different males of the area. And I'm very, very relieved to see them back together again. So definitely be following up with these guys this afternoon on the Sunset Safari. And as always, a big thank you to Wium for his great camera work, even in a tricky, rather thick situation. And for now, I'm going to say a big goodbye and thank you to you all, and of course a big thank you to Nikki and Tara in FC, and Eugene for his technical genius, and I will see you tomorrow this afternoon for the Sunset Safari. Cheers for now.